Hi there, guys. Yeah, thanks, Neil. Thanks for the introduction. So I'm Sam Shave. Think Beyond is a sport and social impact consultancy working predominantly in sport. And as Neil says, we're going to focus a bit on how sport can be a powerful tool for social and environmental change. As the world sort of heats up, the impact on sport is becoming increasingly clearer. A recent study revealed that by 2050, many of the world's cities will be too hot to safely host the Olympic Games. And I think these rising temperatures pose a significant risk, not just for the athletes, but also to the future of sports themselves. But amongst these challenges, sport has a vital role to play, both on the environmental and social side, in how it can lead the way to create positive change. So today we're joined by Rishi and Will, who are organisations in Liverpool and the NFL that are really leading the way, both on the environmental and social side of things, in driving that change through sport. So very quickly, Rishi, just coming to you first, can you just give a 30-second overview of your role and what that entails?
Yeah, of course, thanks, Sam. So my name is Rishi, I'm Director of Impact at Liverpool Football Club. So my role is, I get the privilege of leading the Red Way. So the Red Way is our overarching commitment to build a better future for our people, our planet and communities. For the football club, it's all encompassing, includes everything that we do, very much from an operational level up to the very top of the business.
Perfect. And Will?
Hi everyone, great to see you all today. Will Stone, I've been with the NFL for 5 years here in our London, UK office. My role is kind of, as the job title says really, I oversee all our social impact work in the UK. That entitles kind of two programs. One is our NFL Foundation UK, where we use flag football, non-contact American football, to target the most deprived communities of the UK and engage young people through the sport and kind of all the other cultural and Americana things that the NFL brings. And then with our Flag in Schools program as well, growing the sport and engaging as many young people to get active as we possibly can. And then on the government engagement side, working with our national and local government to create great partnerships with the NFL here in the UK.
Awesome. That's great. Thank you both. And we haven't got too long. We're going to try and rattle through some questions, and then we will open the floor for some questions at the end as well, so be thinking of those. So Rishi, coming to you first, and a sort of relatively broad question, but Liverpool, obviously a huge global club, breaking audiences worldwide for viewership. You do have a unique kind of platform to be able to influence, millions of fans globally. So in your experience, why do you believe sport is an effective platform for driving change?
Biggest club in the world. Just FYI. Just saying that. Didn't get any boos either, I suppose.
Very polite audience.
Yeah. Why is sport makes you feel something? Like, we know that we all work in sport, but I think for me and for us who recognise there are probably only really two industries that can make you really feel like that. It's music and it's sport. I'm very lucky and feel very privileged to work in sport, and we know that if we can get the messaging right, if we can talk to the topics that really involve people and invoke movement within people, we know we can make a difference. And that's where we feel the Red Way really sort of encompasses that. Red Way is 3 pillars: people, planet, communities. It allows us to level up certain messaging when we want to talk, for example, around diversity and inclusion. And that's really important to certain communities, and it should be really important to all communities. But then when we talk about the planet, we know for some audiences, the planet can feel a bit dry. Hopefully not to this audience, given where we are, but actually it can be a dry topic. So for us, we know that we can utilise the power of the badge, the power of the athletes that we have, both across men's and women's teams, the voice that we have, and say, let's create a movement together, and really feel we've been able to do that.
Yeah, and then, Liverpool is obviously a global football club. You play all around the world. The Red Way has done amazing things, but there is if I was being challenging, there is an inherent challenge of running a global football team. Can you just talk briefly about the sort of operational challenges and how you balance that up against the sort of sustainability and the importance of the Red Way?
And Sam, you're totally right. That is the challenge. So this season we want to play, 67 games is the goal. Because that means that you've reached the final stages, or if not the final, of every major competition, and hopefully you're going to go win the absolute lot, because that's what we want. And with that becomes a more condensed fixture schedule, more travel, tighter time frames, tighter turnarounds. So inevitably your emissions are going to go up. So for us, what we've done is really embedded sustainability into our decision-making processes. So take Anfield, which is our home. You've got sustainability embedded into everything that we do. Are we a sustainable stadium? No. Are we going to be? Probably not. But actually, have we worked really hard? Have colleagues across the club who've embedded sustainability into their every day? Absolutely. When we make decisions around how we serve food to people, how we sort of collect 500,000 plastic bottles a year from Anfield, what do we do with them? How do we recycle them? How do we upcycle them? That's a really important part to us. And then from a travel perspective as well, there is this sort of myth that football players will jump on a private jet to go 20 miles down the road. It's just not the reality. But actually, we recognise that there is a need to travel, but we also really make really complex and strategic decisions around performance-related data and other bits and bobs around that to make sure that when we make a decision to fly or we make a decision to get a coach, it's the best thing for the team, but also the best thing for the environment.
Super. Will, coming to you, I think it's fair to say the NFL in the US has long been a driver of social change, and just sort of touching on that social piece. You talked a bit about it, but can you just talk a bit about what the NFL has done in the UK, particularly with flag football, which I think is really interesting, around underserved communities?
Sure. So, as you say, in the US, the league is 104 years old. I think this is our 104th season. We've just started last weekend, and in the US, it's, with like clubs here, like Liverpool here, our NFL clubs are very committed to their community. They do a huge amount locally across where their stadiums are, where those teams are based, but also as a league across the US. And we've been playing now games in London since 2007. We've played over 30 games here in the UK. And as the UK has become kind of our second largest market in terms of games and other metrics as well, equally there's been an importance to ensure that we're giving back to community here in the UK. So that's kind of what my role is all about, is how can we as the NFL deliver really true, authentic impact that's aligned with us as an organisation, but actually is also creating significant change to the people that we're trying to work with. So for us, we've found quite a sweet spot with flag football, which to many of you may be unfamiliar sport, but it's got inclusion in the Olympics in LA 2028, and we're seeing massive growth for the sport all across the world and here in the UK as well. Essentially, it's non-contact American football, so 5-on-5, you wear kind of tag rugby belts, similar kind of thing. You just need cones and a ball to play. And what we've seen is that the adaptability, the engagement of the sport is really engaging young people from backgrounds that maybe are traditionally less involved in sort of more traditional UK sports. So really high female engagement with our foundation programs. We're over 50% female participation here in the UK. Over 75% of the young people we're working with come from a diverse background as well. We're talking young people from a refugee background, young homeless young people, young Muslim females. There seems to be a really interesting piece around flag football and its ability to engage lots of different groups from different places, different experiences and different backgrounds. So for us, we recognise that the sport, the connection to the league, I think because of the NFL, when you think of the NFL, you think of the halftime show at Super Bowl, you think of fashion, you think of gaming, you think of all these different things that we know are really successful at engaging young people. So if we can combine that real engagement with our brands in partnership with really strong local community organisations who understand the issues that young people are facing in their communities far better than we do, and we can partner in that with them, invest in them, provide them with the tools and equipment to deliver flag football. What we're seeing is that those organisations are able to now reach a whole group of young people that they haven't been able to previously work with. And with that, as you bring more people into the services of these expert organisations, more of those young people are really seeing the benefit of being involved in the programs.
And it's interesting, isn't it? Because I think, occasionally, and probably we've moved on a little bit, but sustainability, social impact is sometimes seen as sort of over here. Can you just talk a bit about how actually it's embedded in your strategy of growth as a global organisation?
Yeah, it's absolutely fundamental to what we do here, because we have, 3 games a year taking place in October. What are we doing the rest of the year? We want to be an all year round sport, part of the sporting landscape here in the UK. And community and participation are massive ways that we can achieve that all year round impact. For us, I sort of compare it a little bit. The games are kind of a bit like our Red Nose Day. They're kind of like we're doing a lot of stuff all year round, and the games are really that opportunity to showcase everything we're doing across the country the rest of the year, really.
And then just coming on to the sort of environmental side of things, I think, sport has probably taken a bit of time to catch up in this space, and Liverpool are leading the way on in many ways globally. I think, Will, it's probably fair to say the NFL a little bit further behind. Can you just sort of talk about where you're at on that journey, where you want to go as an organisation?
Yeah, for sure. I think being frank, I think American sports have been probably slower to pick up compared to sports in Europe. It's something that we're really invested in. We've just done some sustainability audits around our international games, around Super Bowl, around the NFL draft, which are our kind of key tentpole events. So we're kind of analysing that data and that information right now. We're looking at everything from how people travel to the game, both teams and fans, how we deliver food waste around those games, how we power those games, kind of all the different factors that you would consider. So we're kind of analysing and looking at that right now. But similarly to Rishi, the team need to get around to different places. And for us, we have real ambitions to be a global sport. I just came back from Sao Paulo last week, where we had our first game in South America. We're playing our first game in Madrid next year. More and more, we just had approval from our ownership to play at least up to eight international games from next year. So how do we marry up that ambition to playing games all around the world, growing the sport as much as possible, taking the excitement of an NFL game to as many people, bringing the benefit of our community programs to as many people around the world, alongside that sustainability challenge is, I think, something we're really thinking hard on, but I wouldn't say we've found an answer to that challenge. And I would say no league or no major competition has found an answer to that yet, and I think that's a really important discussion and challenge that we should be having as an industry.
Yeah, and I think we've touched a bit on those challenges. I suppose, Rishi, coming to you, I think one of the things that Liverpool has been able to do, and there are probably a number of brands in the room, I think one of the things that the club's been able to do is really look at your commercial partnerships, not just from a football side of things and a monetary side of things, but actually saying, where are some of our challenges? Where are the things that we want to achieve as a club? And actually, how can we partner with brands that enable that to happen? Can you just sort of touch a bit upon that in terms of how you've worked with some of your partners, both on the operational side of things and how it's really led to some commercial success for you guys as well?
Absolutely. So the best example of that is we worked with a commercial partner who they came to us and they said, it's quite a strange conversation to have, we want to improve your waste infrastructure, which is an interesting conversation to have. And actually, it was a great conversation to have because you've got Anfield, I mentioned circa 500,000 plastic bottles coming out of the stadium every season, and the last thing we want to do is stick them in the bin. So actually we worked with said partner to develop this waste infrastructure that really, and the highlight of this is actually recycling rates, and it's a fan behavioural piece. So work with said partner, used our assets, used our voice, used our platform to enhance our match day recycling rates from 25%, and they've sort of landed now about 95%. 95, I'll be generous, it's like 94 points.
95.
Yeah, we'll add up. But that's amazing because that's not necessarily something that people go, oh wow, that's really exciting. But for us as a club, it absolutely is, because you're working with an organisation who are incredibly committed to improving and enhancing what we do as a football club, and you're working in partnership with them to do that. But what the most exciting part of that is that's about fan behavioural change. It sounds really simple, but you're literally putting bins out and you're labelling them up in the right way, but you learn lessons along the way. First time you roll these bins out, they said cups on them, and then you get all the cups, you get the paper, you get the reusables, you get all these, and the contamination levels are so high we just can't use it. You go, okay, that's a lesson that we learned. And then as we go on and on, we've got better and better and better at that, and we've actually can look back now and say that our fans have been part of a journey with us, and we haven't actually announced this publicly yet, but over the sort of 3-year period of partnership, we've been able to recycle over 1 million plastic bottles in the stadium. And that's huge, and that's something that we're really proud of. And the next step on that is circularity. So now with those bottles, we use them to create product, to create use for community groups, to create shop fittings, to create boards that can be used to the chipboard, and then ultimately we're doing the circularity piece along with the reduction piece as well. But overall, from a partnerships perspective now, what we're seeing with the Red Way, with the credibility that we have and the hard work that we put in across the club, we're now seeing prospective and current partners come to us and say, we want to be part of the Red Way. Yes, you want to be part of Liverpool Football Club, and there's a huge range of amazing assets and access to certain things that come part of that. But the most exciting bit for me is the fact that they say, we want to make a difference with you. And that's working really, really well. We're now working with brands, both current and prospective, who are saying, these are our challenges. And our challenges are the same as most organisations. We're very open and out there in terms of how progress is being made. We're now leaning on some of our partners to say, right, you've got expertise in this area. Can you help us? Can you tell a story with us? But most importantly, can you help us overcome this barrier? So it's all moving in the right direction.
And from a fan perspective, you touched on the start about this sort of platform that sport has. Do you think fans want to be hearing about this stuff from their sporting organisations? Is it something that they are keen to hear about? Where do you think that relationship is in terms of some of this, in terms of sort of some of this news that you want to put out about it?
You know what, Sam, I'd say absolutely. I think for us as Liverpool Football Club, I'd say we're in a position where our fans expect us to talk to topics which are important to them, which are important to people, which are important to planet and our communities. And you could see that two ways. You could either see it as a burden, you could see it as something on your back where you're like, okay, we're going to have to do this, or you could see it as an opportunity. And we're very much a football club that sees it as the latter. we see it as an opportunity to go out and do the right thing. So, for example, we've got a lot of firsts as a football club, with the first UK sports team to be involved in the Pride March. And we still talk about that now, and it was 12 years ago. But it's a real milestone moment in our history. A couple of months ago, we had over 2,000 to 3,000 people come to Anfield to break fast with us at the stadium. It was iconic. We had the call to prayer at Anfield, and we also managed to annoy a couple of high-profile individuals who I won't name, but you can imagine who they were, at the same time. So I was like, job done. But actually, that is what we are about as a football club. It's not necessarily about being the first. It's about doing the right thing for the right reasons. Like, I'm lucky enough to get to go to Anfield and watch majority, if not all, of our games. And every time our players take the knee, the whole stadium applauds. And that makes me really proud as a fan, as a colleague, but also says to me that that is the level of expectation we have from our supporters. And it is an incredible opportunity, but also a privilege that we need to and continue to be really careful with and protect that as much as we possibly can.
Yeah.
I agree. I think there's such a unique platform that if we can engage in the right. I mean, in the US, we had 200 million people watch Super Bowl last year. Taylor Swift obviously was a helpful factor in that as well.
She was 199 of it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was 50 million increase on last year's Super Bowl, so that will tell you something. But the top 48 most watched TV shows in the US are NFL games. So how do we utilise the brands and the platforms that we have to work on that kind of behavioural change or engage people in topics that maybe they're less traditionally engaged with? Can we use our unique, we're amazing at telling stories. It's kind of what we do. That's why we exist. So how can we tell stories in a way that engages around some of these topics and provides that kind of behavioural change or change of mindset to ensure that kind of everyone is thinking about this in a really important way?
And you've started to touch upon it, and again, there'll be a lot of organisations here that aren't sport. In fact, virtually all of them, I would guess. So we'll come into you and maybe sort of building on that. What do you think are the lessons that those organisations outside of sport can learn from sport in terms of its approach to some of this work?
I think the one of the great things that sport is good at is working in partnerships, as you were saying, Richie. I think we are really open. We don't have all the answers. I think we will openly admit that. That's why with our social impact approach, we wanted to partner with really strong local organisations who know their communities inside out. We're never going to have that insight. We haven't lived in that community. In some cases, we've never even been to those communities. So compared to someone who's lived there 30 years, how are we supposed to tell them how to operate? And it's a similar thing with us in the sort of wider sustainability space. I think we are open and interested to learn how we can develop approaches that will make a bigger difference to a bigger positive impact to the planet and other things as well. So I think you will find with sport that there is a lot of openness to change, to make differences where we can, and would welcome the opportunity for as a sports industry, I think, for us to learn from leaders and others who can really help us make sure we're in the right direction around these things.
And I'd say, just to add to that and to complement Will's point, I think for us, and something we found a lot of success in, is being open and transparent about the challenge ahead and the journey. It's not really a sports thing. In the sports sector, and in most sectors, you see a launch, big giant purses, this type of thing. 3 years later, look at what we did, pats in the back, we did a great job. But actually, from a Redway perspective, we've gone, no, let's flip that and let's talk to what we want to achieve, and then let's report against it. And some of it's tracking well, some of it not so well. But actually, I think as an organisation, if you're open and willing to do that, that's how you will find those solutions. You can't go out to people and say, as Will suggested, you can't go out to them and say, help us solve our problems if you're not willing to talk to them yourself. So that is something I'd always say to people to do.
I think the other thing around sport, and I've often seen sustainability referred to as a sort of storytelling challenge. That's a big part of it. I think athletes and players have a role in that, and we sort of see maybe a starting of sort of some players to sort of stand up in this space. But can you just touch upon very briefly kind of that side of things in terms of, do you think players have a responsibility? It's obviously tricky sometimes to put their head above the parapet, but Will, I don't know.
Yeah, I think as a league we have something called the My Cause, My Cleats campaign, which is a really successful campaign around kind of November, December time. All players are able to choose, basically design their cleats to support a social cause of some kind. So we are really positive around giving our athletes that platform to be able to talk about issues that they care about, and some more and more are starting to think about this, and I think it's how can we support them around those issues and those topics. I think the interesting thing that we see in a lot of data is that more and more people are following athletes rather than clubs or teams, so they will follow Cristiano Ronaldo no matter where he's playing, rather than Liverpool. scored a few goals against and Arsenal as an Arsenal fan. 20 minutes of walk away from the Emirates. But how athletes connect. Again, athletes connect to people in a way that few other people can. Maybe musicians, maybe that's it in a lot of ways. So how can we support the athletes? How can we, like Lewis Hamilton has with Mission 44 and around sort of diversifying the motorsport industry? How can we give these guys the tools, the support, the infrastructure to really, and the framework to be able to really shout about these causes that they care about? Because it's really, really powerful when they do.
And to be honest, I couldn't really say it much better. But that's the thing for us is we'll work with our players to say to them what's important to you.
Yep.
Isn't the worst thing, you see it all the time, and someone's reading off an autocue, it's really wooden and it's inauthentic, and you just think like it just feels like it doesn't feel real. Whereas actually we'll go to players and be like, what is really important to you? So for example, Andy Robertson, Scotland captain, long-serving player, one of our longest-serving players now. Food and food poverty is incredibly important to him. So like, okay, we can help you elevate that. Joe Gomez is really passionate around sort of Black history and equality, so we'll work with Joe to do that, and actually working with players across the men's and the women's side and what's important to them allows us to elevate their voice on our channels. So it's done in a Liverpool context, which is brilliant for us, but actually as individuals we're able to help them on their journey to go on and be advocates and create social change.
Awesome. We are just about to wrap up and we'll come to the floor, but just as a sort of, I suppose, throwing forward, we are in the midst of this, incredibly challenging times, both socially and environmentally. Just from both of you, what do you see as the sort of, how is sports role going to adapt, change, develop as we move forward? It is becoming, a more global, it's becoming embedded in culture even more so. So, how do you're obviously both doing amazing work, but how do you see that evolving and changing over the next 4, 5, 6, 7 years? Will, I'll come to you first.
I think sport is one of the most adaptable things that are out there. I mean, if you think back in history, we're not all sat in the Colosseum in Rome watching sport in the same way that we did 2,000 years ago. Sport is incredibly adaptable. There's new ways of working, there's new technologies, there's all these different things, and I hope, and I like to think in a positive frame of mind, that sport will be able to find a way to address these challenges and continue to deliver a product that people love all around the world. So I don't think we have all the answers yet, but I think the adaptability of some very clever people and a mindset will hopefully get us to that point.
Yeah. And I'd say you're starting to see, you can see the infrastructure now in sport, like this conversation, mine and Will's role. I think every Premier League football club now has somebody who's looking at sustainability, dedicated role, Premier League commitment, UEFA equipment, that's being embedded into the sport now, as not necessarily just you must do this, but also this is the right thing to do. And 2 years ago that wasn't there. So I think that onus on sport, football clubs, teams, organisations is going to grow and grow. I think the expectation on sports is probably higher than most because it's sport and it's big, but actually I think it's also important to recognise that those expectations should be different because we all work in different environments. But that doesn't mean that sustainability, social impact isn't important to those teams.
Wonderful. We're going to open the floor to some questions. I think Neil has got the roving mic.
Here we are. This is where I come in again. Thank you very much indeed. Yeah, we will open the floor to any questions. Immediate one at the front.
Lee Taylor, Oracle Rebel Racing Formula One team. Obviously within sport we have a significant opportunity to use the spirit of competition to drive forward positive impact. We as Rebel, we want to be better than our competitors off the track as well. We want to make a bigger impact than them. But sometimes to really maximize that impact, we also have to balance that with collaboration, even with our fiercest rivals. So I'm intrigued to hear how within your sporting worlds you see that balance of competition versus collaboration with your rivals, and also what are the lessons that can be shared with our non-sporting friends on how they can balance that in their own fields.
So I can come in on that. So I'll be honest with you, I get asked this all the time, and someone asked me last year, would you do a joint campaign with Man United? And I was like, oh, there's rivalry and there's rivalry. But in all honesty, why not? Why wouldn't you work with your greatest rivals? I think that's one thing, and they're not in the room today. The Premier League have done a really good job in the football set, and they've actually done a really good job in bringing the teams together to say we're all working towards the same things. We all agree to a shared commitment, which for a club who've just come into the Premier League, it's achievable. For a club like us who've been working on it for a longer time than them, you could say we've already achieved what we need to do, but that doesn't stop us from doing it. And there's beauty in that, and you actually are seeing a huge amount of best practice sharing, but also sharing challenges, saying to organisations, you know what, we really struggle with this. And also the nice things, like, are you also getting harassed by the supplier? It's actually quite nice to have that bit of solidarity with people and understand. And when someone's come to you saying, yeah, but actually they're really good, you can have a different conversation with them. So we're definitely seeing that in the football setting, and a long way to continue.
I would just add
No, go.
I would just add, I mean, SailGP is one of our other clients, and they launched something called the Impact League, which was actually, so SailGP launched a number of years ago and said sustainability is the heart of it. And we challenged them and said, okay, if sustainability is at the heart of your organisation, who wins? I said, what do you mean who wins? The person that's fast in the boat. Well, if it's all about sustainability, shouldn't it be the people that are most sustainable? So we launched the Impact League for the most sustainable team. And that's been running now for a number of years, and it's got so competitive that we've caught people sneaking plastic bags and old waste out their hotel rooms because they don't want to get caught with it because they'll get negative points. So it's almost using that competition to actually drive progress and performance, from a sustainability perspective. So I think there's that as well.
No, I'm conscious that we haven't got much time
Yeah.
for more questions.
Yeah, should we move to the next one?
Yeah, we'll take one more. If there's one more in the room, if we can keep it just at the back there. And if we can keep the question relatively tight and the answers equally tight, I'll be very grateful.
I think Rishi has mentioned the impact of travel and the success, that success impacts the amount of travel. And obviously, I think all in the room know that, speaking from the environmental point of view, we are talking a lot of emissions here. And I'm curious, what strategies have you identified to actually tackle this, and how to get players on board? Because I bet you have heard some stories, for instance, from PSG, then they laughed off the accusations of one of the journalists that they just fly over the train, even though it was a similar distance. It would have been only, I think, 1 hour of difference. Thanks.
Yeah, so I can't, and I shouldn't speak about other teams, so I won't do that. But from an LFC perspective, what we built out was a really in-depth travel policy. And that's actually really helpful because that's a document it's more than the door-to-door hours of how long does it take to get there. It's actually a lot more detailed than that. It's got performance data plugged into it. It's got information about our injuries at that moment in time. Hopefully there aren't any. It's got what's the next fixture, when's the last fixture, when's the next fixture after that. So actually it's a really scientific approach to the way that we travel. We're not in a position where, and I don't know if any club is in this position, where they just sort of go, what do you fancy doing for this game? It's actually a really scientific process. Obviously, we've just brought in a new head coach as well, so that's another conversation that we'll be continuing to have with him and his team, because obviously he has different standards that he works towards. But actually, for us, what we're really pleased to be able to say is for last year's travel, both from a colleague and a team perspective, we completely followed our travel policy. And that's really positive for us. Will we always look to reduce our travel and our emissions just generally? Absolutely, but for us, having the policy is very much the most important part, and making sure that we stick to that. And we've got colleagues across the business and the football side, including the players, who are really committed to doing that.
Yeah, I think, for us, it comes back to partnerships. That we know we have to get the people here to play games, so how can we do that in the most effective way? How can we work with our airline partners, our stadium partners, the teams? For example, the Jacksonville Jaguars are staying here for 2 weeks because they're playing two games here. So is that a solution to, rather than have 6 teams flying over, we have fewer teams flying over because of that reason? So how can we meet the same objective but work to find the solutions to make sure that we're dealing with this in the most practical but also in the most sustainable way, is something we're looking at constantly as well.
And I think even someone like Formula One, who changed their race calendar to make sure that it made more sense in terms of races in certain parts of the world at the same time. And I think the question about Rishi's not allowed to speak on behalf of other clubs, but I can, so it's fine. But I think that's an education piece. Actually, that reaction was because that particular player didn't have the knowledge and understanding of, okay, what am I talking through here? That is an education piece to explain, okay, why is this important? Why have you of a platform got a player, and how do you respond to that?
Okay, thank you very much indeed. We are going to wrap it there. Rishi, I would ask you offline if you can tell me anything about Mo Salah, Virgil or Trent's contracts. I would sleep more easily at night if you could tell me that afterwards, but we'll take that offline. But in the meantime, a big thank you to Sam Shave, Rishi Chain and Will Stone. Thank you.